Okay, so we were talking about integration testing with MSW. So before we start, I'll just give you an idea of who I am. So I'm Balavishnu, and I work at Healthify Me as an engineer, mostly in front end. Mostly I work on React and React Native projects. That's what primarily I work at. So yeah, that's more about me. If you are interested to know, there's a link which you can get more information. Okay, so what we want to talk about this in this test is why integration test, why I'm focusing on integration test, why we shouldn't be focusing on mocking library specific or pattern specific mocks like if you have fetch or axios, and how we can use MSW to make it better. And if we get time, we can do some bonus things also. Okay, so why am I focusing on integration testing? When you're writing tests, the problem is if you're mocking too much, right? It is easier if you're mocking a lot of things. It's easier for you to mock, easier for you to write tests. But the problem is the more you mock, the less confidence you have in your test because that's all the things which your actual users might not be used to. But again, the problem if there are two ends to integration testing, one would be unit tests, another would be an end-to-end test. Unit tests are much easier to write because you can mock every scenario and every test case you want to test. At the same time, end-to-end tests, those things are difficult to create each and every scenario for your test. So integration test becomes a balanced place where you are mocking as minimal things as possible. At the same time, you're testing as many use cases you could do. Also, because you're doing the same thing, you're also able to see how your application is going to work. Like now, if you read a test, you would be able to understand, okay, hey, this is how this page interacts with the user. And these are the cases you have in specific to this page on the specific module. And if something goes wrong, it's much easier to catch those bugs if the test relies on something which a developer can run on his own machine. Because if the things run on end-to-end tests, and most of the people, we don't run end-to-end tests in your local, we just rely on CI to run those tests. And breaking way too late in a development process is difficult to fix also, right? If let's say while creating let's say ordering something and your and the page failed. Now, in end-to-end test, it's difficult to figure out why did it fail because of the API failed or is something from the front end failed. That's difficult to understand. So integration test, you're just mocking. So everything relies in your own domain. At the same time, you have the confidence of your application. So having said that, this is a baseline I want to set why I'm focusing on integration tests, not on other two ones. Though the whatever concepts you are learning today, how MSW works, you could apply it on either from unit test till end-to-end test. You should be able to apply them at all the cases. So why have we uh, are we focusing on not mocking library specific? Or when I say library specific, fetch is not a library, but let's for our easiness, let's call it a library specific because and you have libraries like Axios and other request making libraries, and then you have GraphQL has multiple adapters where you're making GraphQL requests to, right? So a lot of different ways of libraries, and each one has its own trade-offs. So you pick a library for you to based on your application. Now, the problem comes up when your testing also relies on your choices of your request making library, right? So if you choose let's say you started with Axios and you later realize you're not using any features of Axios and you're shipping a library which your users are not going to use. Let's go back to fetch, and a very lightweight polyfill would work. And the problem if your fetch and if your mocks are looking like there are mocking libraries for Axios and there are mocking libraries for fetch. If you're using a specific one, migrating from one version from one fetch to Axios will be difficult because let's say when you have test and your application, and let's say you're changing if you're changing one at a time, then it's easier. Then you have a confidence. Let's say you have tests and you're changing your application, and your tests are still passing. Then you have the confidence of your refactoring the code. Hey, everything works well. I don't have to worry about anything. Or when you are changing the application or changing the test and your application remains same, so you are adding more test cases. You are finding a bug through a test, so you have more confidence. Your test saying, hey, my tests are working as expected in the application. But if you change both of them, in case if you want to migrate from let's say from Axios to fetch, you are changing your code because you want to change your code wherever fetch was used, you want to use Axios. And the same thing happens in your test also. You want to change all the mocks where you're done. Now the problem is both of them are changing at the same time. And this gives less confidence because a lot of things are changing at the same time. So not only if you're, let's say you don't want to switch libraries, or even let's say tomorrow a library, whatever library you're using, let's say in Axios, and they come up with a breaking change. It would be very difficult for us to realize that things are breaking if a version upgrade had a breaking changes, and your mocking library might not be exactly mocking the way it has to, because your test might still be uh, passing because you're mocking the entire library itself, uh, and your application might be breaking. So that's a false positive false. So that's what we want to focus on, why MSW solves this problem. So I can give a quick demo of it. So we have a very simple application which just if you select a breed of a dog, it shows a dog's photo, and you can randomly ask for another photo of the same breed. So you just click and you get another breed of same photo. This is the application, the entire application. You are able to see the code, right? Hopefully it's visible to you. So it's just a list of breeds, and then we have image to show, and a button to fetch a new dog. That's entire application how it is. And we are just getting an image as soon as the page loads, and we are changing them whenever effect changes. We are just basically fetching the dog again. So there are two services. I'm using fetch over here. There's two services. One is fetch dog breeds. So you're just fetching fetching the image of a specific breed, and you're fetching the list of dog breeds, which is to fill up your drop down. Okay. So let me. Yes, MSW is mock service worker. If sorry, if I was. Okay. I'll show how you generally write a test with fetch. So what we're doing is before we started rendering the app, I am mocking the first response, basically list of breeds. Then I'm rendering the app so that as soon as the page renders, my drop down gets filled. Then I'm trying to select which what is this drop down. Then once the dropdown is mocked, before I click, I want to mock the next API. This is basically the image, the API which returns the image based on the breed. And then I'm clicking on it. And then I'm verifying the image was loaded or not. Then again, I'm mocking the response of the breeds API so that a new image link is returned. Then again, I'm clicking on the same button, random button, and then I'm waiting for the image URL to change. This is what we're doing. So the you would have already realized that one biggest problem is you do not know what API you're mocking, right? You're just mocking entire fetch. You're not verifying whether this can kind of be, we can fix it by expecting, let's say, you could just say expect, fetch to be called with particular URL or not. That might, fix this problem for you. But the problem is, again, it's not as easy for you to read uh, called with, let's say, whatever the URL you want to test with, right? So that's the problem with reading how it is. And also you also noticed the order in which you're mocking things also is important, right? So now if I had mocked this thing way before this, let me just run the test. If I'm testing, let me just run. Yeah, there's only one test. So right now the test should pass. Okay, right? So let's say if I have accidentally moved this mock on the top here itself. Okay, now the problem is your test would fail. No, the test didn't fail either. So the problem is uh, this is what it's getting mocked, and it's your list is actually not working well because your list API got regenerated, right? So that's, I think the application wouldn't work there. So that's the another problem. It sometimes gives you a false positive on how your APIs are mocked. So let's try to migrate this from fetch to mock service worker. Just to clarify, your test just runs on Node. It does not have service workers. It's just patching Node request library. There is no service workers in Node. Just to be sure of this, the library can be used in a development time also. If we get time, we can look into that also. Okay, to start with, MSW, I just take the doc and just let me just quit this thing, and we'll add MSW to the dependency and defining the mocks. I'm just going through the documentation. So the reason is so that you can also try this at later at home. And I'll try to push all the code and things on GitHub later. Okay, so I'm just creating a directory with mocks. Okay, yeah, mocks exists, so that should be fine. And then I'm creating a file with handlers. This is going to be where we are going to store all our mocks. If it are smaller projects like this, you can keep it at one place, but if it's a bigger project, you can keep inside every test also. That's also fine. You don't have to keep all that at once. We are going with REST API, so we'll just see how to create REST API once. So we want to, in our uh, handler.js, I'll just open my handler.js. And this is the file we just created. I'll just copy this example from here and just paste it, and we'll change the things whatever is inside. But yeah, this is a basic how it looks like. So I just delete a lot of there's too much things. So you would see the mocks are which quite easy to understand here. We're just saying here res.post. We're basically expecting a URL and request and response to basically to figure out how you want to respond. So what we will do is we'll copy the first. So here we do not know which API we want to mock. So we'll go here and we'll just copy the list API which you want to mock. We'll just copy the URL. And we'll just add to here as this is the URL. So if it's local API, you just put a relative path. You don't have to put the domain, but we are actually mocking a different domain, so we'll just put the entire URL. And we want to respond with a JSON. So let me just copy the response. Status is fine. That is fine. That's okay. I'll just say ctx.json. Would be this is going to be our test data whatever we had here. So I'll just copy no, this one. Yeah, this is the list API for us. So I just copy this and I'm just going to paste it over here, and this should ideally should just work. We don't need these things, and this is going to rest.get. Right, and this should be okay. We'll add one more. This is going to be our okay. I'll just add one. I just want to show you a thing, features also this thing also. So I'll just remove this for now, and I wouldn't want to mock fetch. I'll just comment it out here so I can remove it later. And I'll just go to setup.just. This is just resetting the mock and polyfill for fetch. That's also not there. Fine. Okay, this is fine. We'll see how to integrate. We want to integrate on the node. We'll just create another file for this. And we'll just fetch all the server.js and here. So these are the handlers we defined before. We just defined one. We'll define the other one a bit later. But yeah, so this should work. Yeah, so now in your this could be based on your setup, if or we can just keep it in our individual test, depends on how use case based. But for simplicity, I'll just keep it on the test we are writing, but this could be in your setup tests too, so that should not be a problem. So what we're doing here is we got a server from the server.js, and we are just listening, and while listening we can say, I think unhandled request, we can say warn. This is also a very good debugging tool, which lets you know if you're not mocking any API. That's what I want to show here. Right? Let's say I just save it and I just test watch. So it should at least run the first part, but ideally it just should break. Yeah. So now what you see here is it says, hey, we captured a URL. We are not intercepting it. Are you sure you want to do that? That's because we are saying warn if I'm not mocking. This is also very good. This is the reason it helps in our integration test. Let's say one of your component is actually making, and a sub component is making the API call. It will be easier to detect what API calls needs to be mocked, right? So we'll just do one thing. We'll just copy this URL what needs to be mocked. We'll add it our handlers. So what we let me just uh, yeah, this entire thing I wanted to be copied. I just copy this entire thing, and I'll just copy this URL which needs to be mocked. URL can be parameterized, but let's, I just for simplicity just I'm just copying whatever was there in the request. And the response is something we expect it to be this, right? Want this as the response, so just copy this as the response. And I'll just, yes, I will change it here. So API response has changed, so I'm just saving it. So now if you would see our test, yes, so this is new image. We expected a no image to be there in the test, so that should be fine. See, okay, fine. So these are test second. Let's go. So now I'm just removing these. This is the first part of the mock. We don't want this is be handled in the let's say. Now this is a use case where you want to change the mock based on just before the test you're doing some action, right? This could be here in case because before us a random URL is hit. I want to change the response to something else. So what I could do is I'll just go here. I'll just copy the same response from here, and I just paste it over here, and I'll change the response to new image. So basically, I need to get rest, so I'll just import rest from MSW. I think that's the right import. Hopefully, so this should actually, yeah, that's our migration from fetch to mocks and so on. Now if you see here, another biggest thing is your handlers are, you could keep it in different place without having to rely on which order you're mocking things. You're defining the URL based on you're seeing what the response is. And also it also gives you the flexibility of changing the response runtime in your test. So that's also a feature you want while you're testing. So this helps you in testing particular use cases and stuff. This is more on how you migrate from fetch to or any library. So if I go and change this to Axios, so the thing you notice here is it doesn't matter what library you're using. If I change to Axios, it should still work fine. So the bonus feature what I was talking about is we could still use this thing in your browser, right? So that's the thing which helps you in let's say your backend is not ready, right? Or if you, let's say your APIs or your system is slow for some reason, you're not able to access, you do not have internet connection, or some reason you want to mock the APIs in your development server or local server at the same time without having to change too many things. So that's what we'll see, how easy is it to do it with MSW if you have already have a list of mocks for your tests. Or it could work vice versa also. While your development time, you can define these handlers and use the same handlers while you're writing tests. So I just create the public path is defined basically from where your index is filed. If it's a CRA, that's public, and other files for next few other things, common projects, MSW is listed down. If it's not from these things, you need to know where your static file is being served from. So I'm just creating MSW a service socket file. It just creates a service socket file. Let me just see if I can show you. Public folder, it creates a mocks. You're not supposed to do anything with this file, it just generates, so you just don't have to worry about anything on that. And let me see, this is done, and I need to create a browser.js. I'll just do that. Mocks, fine. This we need to do it in the browser.js. So this we are just it's the same thing. So if you see here, the setup worker is for your client, and if you go to our server.js, it's setup server. So that's the only difference you have. If you're running in Node, you need setup server. If you're running it in your browser, you just need to import setup worker, right? It works well. To start the worker, we'll just need to put this line of code in your in your index.js to start. Yeah, this is where it starts, right? So before I save it, show this. So it shows how much data was transferred when I'm changing the API. It says where it's loaded from and what time it took. So what I do now, it isn't saved. I'll just and I should just refresh this page. So it should have docs here, fine. So now if our API worked, it should have only one mock. This is one thing what you're seeing is the only response we had it here. So if you want to mock to more response, you can say some other breed, and I'm just keeping the contact same and just keeping it like this. And if I just refresh it over here, you would see, oh sorry, now the mock isn't working. Let me just yeah, so if there is a delay, if initially if your if your API uses it's used before your app starts, you can just wait on uh, package also. That's fine. This is how you are mocking, and if I select something, you see. So here you will see it's been transformed service worker, not from your actual thing. So we don't have some other breed. That's why it shows 404. I think if we select our African, it should show some. I think it's pages 404. I think we didn't mark for a particular request. I think that's why. At least you would see here how you are mocking the APIs, right? Yeah, I think that's how what I wanted to show regarding the fetch. We'll just go back to the slides. So that was the bonus content. How if you are creating a handler for your test or if it's for your development, either one, you could reuse the same handlers for the testing or for your development. So yeah, any questions which I could take? This is what I wanted to share.